Welcome back here to our Big 12 Football Media Days series live from Frisco, Texas. I'm Jackson Schneider, pleased to be joined by the head coach of the Houston Cougars in Willie Fritz. Coach, thank you for joining us. I know it's been a long day, but really appreciate you joining us.
Well, thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. And
I'm a Kansas native. I have to
Yeah.
make sure I do this.
Well, that's exactly where I was going. You're a Kansas guy. You've got ties to the Kansas City area for high school football, where you played in Shawnee Mission, and you played at Pittsburgh State, and you coached there or in the MIAA as well at Central Missouri. So not far away from us locally in Wichita. But tell us a little bit about your football journey, you know, the rise up from high school coaching to junior college. You were in Division II. Now you're in the Big 12 and leading Houston on this big old build of a program that's been exciting.
Well, I'll go through some of the highlights. If I went through my whole career, we'd be here for about an hour. But I graduated from Shawnee Mission Northwest. I played for a guy named Tony Severino, really successful coach at Rockhurst High School. And then I went down to Pittsburgh State and played for Ron Randleman, and we had a lot of success down there. And then I went back and coached my high school for a year. You know, I'm probably one of the few guys that I coached at where I went to college. I coached where I went to high school. I coached where I got my master's. So I went down to Sam Houston, got my master's degree. I coached at a high school called Willis after I got my master's at Sam Houston. It's where I kind of got hooked up with a guy named Michael Bishop. Some of you guys know who he is. He was a little kid when I was there. I was teaching elementary PE and varsity football, and Michael's one of my coaches at University of Houston now. Then I went to Coffeyville Community College. I coached for I think one of the greatest. I think he's the greatest junior college coach ever. A guy named Dick Foster, and he had a bunch of guys that came and played at KU and K State over the years. And you know, he won. You know, he lost a game. You know, once every 2 or 3 years or something. Longest year of my life, we went 9-2 in a season. It was tough because he wasn't used to losing 2. But I was there for 4 years as the D coordinator. Went down to Sam Houston as the D coordinator for Coach Randleman. I hooked up with him again. And then I got an opportunity to become my first head coaching job at Blinn JUCO. Had Michael play for me there. Quincy Morgan was one of my players, played at K-State. Keith Black, he was also a great 400-meter runner as well. Keith, his kids are playing all over the place. One of them plays with the New York Giants, but he played at K-State as well. And then I got the job at Central Missouri. I was there for 13 years, kind of raised my children, and then went back to Sam Houston as the head coach for 4 years. Went over to Georgia Southern. I was head coach over there for 2 years. Went to Tulane for 8 years, and then I'm here at the University of Houston. So I can't keep a job, I guess. It's my problem.
Well, either that or something's going right, right?
Yeah.
You've worked so hard to go from, like we mentioned, high school all the way up to where you are now at Houston. One thing I wanted to ask you is all the different levels that you had coached through. What's maybe the one thing you've kept consistent? Because, I mean, ultimately football is football,
Yeah.
right? But it's a very different challenge every stop.
Well, I'm very consistent with my message at all the different levels. It's funny. I'll have guys that played for me, 30 years ago, and they'll come watch a practice. They're like, Coach, I couldn't finish your sentence on a lot of things. So I try to be very consistent with my message. But you also have got to change with the times. There's things are different now than they were. Football, I don't know if Stan ever sits in on any of the meetings. Stan Weber's sitting over here with us. If he ever sits in on any of the meetings now, football, and it has really changed. It is so different. How complex everything is in football nowadays. So you got to adjust and adapt with the times, and that's just part of it. If you don't, you're going to die. So, I make sure that I adjust with how we do things at the University of Houston. Things are much different football-wise, on the field, off the field, in the classroom, every place.
Well, last year was a big year of growth for your team, especially at the tail end of the season. It felt like you picked up a lot of momentum. What was maybe the biggest thing that your team started to kind of, I don't know, build on and take you into this year where you might be one of the top teams that's discussed as kind of a favorite in this solid conference?
Well, my coaches have done a great job of bringing in the right guys so that we can have a fantastic culture. I have very few problems. The high school kids, it's a lot easier to really dissect those guys and make sure they fit in with what you're doing. But man, you got to do a good job of making quick decisions in the portal. And we did a very good job of finding the right guys that fit in with how we do things at the University of Houston. So, that builds your culture tremendously, and we've done a very good job of that.
Well, a guy that's got a lot of people asking him questions today, following him around, has been Connor Wegman, your quarterback, and a guy that I'm sure you'll be leaning on in a lot of ways on the field and in the locker room this year. But what kind of separates him from the rest of the pack when it comes to like leadership and being a key piece of this team?
Well, he's just the whole package. He's a dual threat quarterback. Probably people didn't realize that, with his great running ability, but he can really run the football, but he throws the ball even better. Great touch, velocity, accuracy. He can make every throw. And in order to be a successful quarterback in this day and age with how complex offenses are now and how complex defenses are now, you got to be smart. And he's a sharp cookie. I mean, he's a really good student, but he's also a 4.0 football IQ kind of guy. So, I've just been impressed with his intelligence on the field and making good, fast, smart decisions.
I know the keys to really any team is being well-rounded, but defense is so important in the sport of football, and especially a conference like the Big 12 where offenses are so talented. How do you make sure your defense continues to evolve and be prepared for the vast and varied challenges you'll face?
Well, you got to be very multiple. And our defense coordinator, Austin Armstrong, we're a very multiple team. If you're not very multiple, you need to be a heck of a lot better talent-wise than the team you're playing. So we run a lot of different stuff, a lot of different packages. Defensively, we make the offense have to prepare and account for us. But I think he does a super job of being multiple, but presenting the information to the guys so that it's not too complex and they can handle all the different things that we do.
All right, Coach. I know you're a busy guy, so you got to get going. I got one last quick question for you. As a former Pitt State Gorilla, what's the biggest thing you've taken from your time down in Pitt?
Oh, I played for a great guy, Ron Randleman. I'm actually going there this Thursday, and we're having a reunion with all the guys. Coach Randleman's going to be there. We're going to have 30, 40 guys there. It's just a lot of fun. They're my second favorite team. The first one's the University of Houston. Then the next, game I check out and see how the Gorillas did. So just, I try to tell my guys, man, we played our bowl game against LSU, and I had 12 of my former teammates from Pitt State come to the game. And I hope my players have those kind of relationships at the University of Houston. The only way to have those kind of relationships is get them around good guys, and they got to stay, and they got to develop those relationships year after year after year.
Awesome. Coach, thank you so much for the time.
Thank you.
And good luck this season. Can't wait to follow along.
All right, go Cougs.
Willie Fritz, head coach of the Houston Cougars, as we wrap up here another great interview from our Big 12 Football Media Days series, brought to you once again by Four Seasons RV and Phil's Coins and Bullion. We'll be back with more on ESPN Wichita right after this.